Well, this question relates to something you brought up earlier, which was Smoky Mountain Wrestling running in Knoxville. Recently on The Experience, you talked about payoffs. The 1994 Smoky Mountain Wrestling Night of Legends was a huge show in Knoxville for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. We actually just passed the anniversary of it, Jim.
Yes.
What were the payoffs like for the big names for that event compared to some of the big shows in Mid-Atlantic or Mid-South? Did you heavily paper that show, or did Horner misappropriate any of the gate receipts for that night? It looked like a packed house at the Knoxville Civic Auditorium.
Actually, that's where Pam Lawson had a fan week. I just looked. We couldn't find $1,200, and she wouldn't give us the records. We've told that story before, nevertheless. But no, they didn't get their hands on any of the box office money from the Night of Legends to begin with. I know this because I've just refreshed myself because I just did the column on the August shows for Fighting Spirit, and I'm going to say that the payroll for I'm trying to remember for the Night of Legends, talent alone. And now the Legends, by the way, nobody flew, everybody drove. And what we did was we got the Legends hotel rooms, and I think we gave some of them like $50 or $75 gas money. But since so many people lived around and it was kind of like a reunion, we invited them and paid their expenses. So that wasn't somebody had said long ago, well, the Legends must have cost them a fortune. The ones on the show we paid, the ones that just came for the ceremony, it was expenses. And I'm going to say that payroll on everybody that was on the show was it was less than $5,000.
Wow.
No, wait. I'm telling a lie. It was probably okay. Here's the thing. Road Warrior Hawk was the highest paid guy. I gave him $750. Dorian Terry worked for me, I believe, that night for $5,000. Bruiser Bedlam was all the Smoky Mountain guys basically got their guarantees because when there was 17 people in the house, they still got their guarantees. So when we finally made some money, they still got their guarantee. Although I think I bonused a couple people, but that was the beauty of the pay structure in wrestling had not gotten out of whack either yet. Everybody was used to being paid on normally what the house drew, or the stars were getting guarantees of $500 or $700 or whatever, or $300 in some cases. I had guys work for me for when it wasn't a sellout and they knew that, the things were thin. But the payoffs in Mid-Atlantic obviously were much bigger than the Night of Legends, because when you think about that was 1994. In 1986, when the wrestling business was on fire and when, the money was coming in, Jim Crockett Promotions grossed $21 million in 1986 as a company. So the Night of Legends, which was one of the 3 or 4 biggest crowds for an independent show in the 90s, I think ECW did more once, maybe, or twice, maybe. And I'll take out the lucha shows at the in LA in 91 or whatever that did giant business. But anyway, the Night of Legends was one of the top 5 independent crowds of the 90s. Another one was the Super Bowl of wrestling the next year in Knoxville. With 4,500 people doing $35,000 or $40,000 at the gate. A couple of ECW shows did that. Nobody else in this country really did that in the decade of the 90s. Just 10 years beforehand in Mid-Atlantic wrestling, we were doing crowds and gates bigger than that in mid-size markets in goddamn smaller towns for spot shows. In Laurinburg, North Carolina, one time at the football field, I remember we did 2,500 people in about like a $25,000 or $30,000 house. So that's the difference in pay was when Crockett or another of the big territories of the 80s were running shows the size of a Night of Legends or a Super Bowl of wrestling or the ECW big shows. They were running those several times a week in, week out. And there were bigger ones. You'd go to Charlotte, your home base, at least once a month and have 8,000 or 10,000 people or whatever the fuck. They were paying out a ton more money because they were drawing a ton more money and on a much more regular basis. For us, Night of Legends was not only the biggest house we'd ever drawn in our 2 years in business at that point, but it was goddamn pretty much, a record breaker for the way the business was at that time. It became a completely different pay scale.